welcome to the Agents of Innovation podcast, where we feature conversations with entrepreneurs, philanthropists, and artists. Hello, and welcome back to the Agents of Innovation podcast. I am your host, Francisco Gonzalez, and I want to thank you for joining us here on episode 65. Today's featured guest is Bob Rubin. He is the founder and CEO of Rubin Wealth Advisors. That's Rubin, R-U-B-I-N. Rubin Wealth Advisors, and they are headquartered in Boca Raton, Florida. I sat down with Bob there, which is right up the road from Florida Atlantic University, my alma mater. Go Owls. Well, Bob is on the board of trustees of Florida Atlantic University, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about his experience there as well. Bob also has many philanthropic causes he's involved with, and one of them is the one closest to his heart. He has a son who has autism, and so Bob's going to talk to us a little bit about his son, and also how Bob is involved in different causes helping people with autism. So it's going to be a really great conversation that I hope you'll tune in for here. Bob is also a longtime listener of the Agents of Innovation podcasts, like many of you. And so it's really great to have him on as a guest today on episode 65. Speaking of listeners of the Agents of Innovation podcast, how are you listening? Probably on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, or maybe on the new app that I'm using, Breaker. Well, however you're listening, I want to thank you for doing that. If you're not yet subscribed to the podcast, I encourage you to do that. Maybe this is your first episode. Maybe you're coming on and listening because Bob Rubin shared this episode with you, or you heard about it because you wanted to listen to Bob's story. Well, we have 64 other incredible episodes with many entrepreneurs, philanthropists, and artists. And I hope you will tune in to hear some of those as well, and stay subscribed, because we have many great guests coming up in the future. Also, we would appreciate any reviews on iTunes. Those really help bump us up in the ratings. And so if you're on Apple Podcast, there's ways to review that there, or whatever podcast app you're using. Please review us, because that will definitely help push us up, and you are the best marketing department any host like myself could dream of. So thank you so much, and thanks for following us on all the different social media accounts. I also mentioned we have artists on this podcast. Today we're having an entrepreneur and a philanthropist in Bob Rubin. To my knowledge, he doesn't play any music. Maybe he paints like Winston Churchill. I don't know. But we do have many artists, and one of the artists we had many, many episodes back was the Curries. They're a great band. They split time between Northern Florida and Charlottesville, Virginia. They have a new album out, and it came out a few months ago. We've played many of the songs from the Curries over the years, but we're going to play a song today that is called Fault Lines, and it's on their new album, This Side of Glass. So please listen at the end of this episode to the Curries, and if you like them, check out their music and maybe support them. They're really, really great and talented artists. So listen to Fault Lines at the end of this episode. But for now, I just want you to sit back, enjoy, go on a run, pump some iron, go on a walk, whatever you do when you're listening to this podcast, driving your car nice and safely, paying attention to all the street signs, and listen to this great conversation that we're going to have with Bob Rubin. I want to welcome to the Agents of Innovation podcast my friend Bob Rubin. Bob, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, Bob is, you're a trusted leader, Bob. And in the financial services industry, but you are the founder and president of Rubin Wealth Advisors. That's Rubin, R-U-B-I-N, and headquartered here in Boca Raton, Florida. And I've known Bob now for over a decade, and we have a lot of great things in common. One of those things, which we'll get to a little bit later, is I'm an FAU alum, and Bob's on the board of trustees of FAU. But Bob, we have talked to a lot of entrepreneurs, and the cool thing also about Bob that our listeners should know is you're also a listener to the Agents of Innovation podcast. Yes. And so excited to be on here, I think. But you have had a over 30-year career now in this financial advising, and I wanted to talk to you about some of the things that have changed and also the way you started your business. So tell us a little bit about as a young man getting started in the world, how did you get into this business, and how did you eventually grow and actually have your own business?
So I am a graduate of USF, University of South Florida, which just became a preeminent university actually in the state of Florida.
Go Bulls.
Go Bulls, absolutely. Back then we only had a basketball team. We didn't even have a football team.
It's always struck me as odd that the University of South Florida is in Tampa.
I know.
I guess, I don't know. I feel like, and it wasn't even created that long ago.
Well, it was about the same time as FAU, which was interesting.
In the 60s?
Yeah, FAU was founded in 61.
So I feel like in like the 1800s or the early 1900s.
1800s?
No. I feel like if you were in the 1800s Florida or early 1900s, you could get away with calling Tampa South Florida.
Right.
But I feel like by the 1960s,
right,
you would go, is it like Miami, Boca?
Well, that's like Izinga calling it the Florida Marlins and all that.
Right.
We try to have an overall branding. It kind of affects us at FAU in the branding because we want to, be South Florida's university.
Right.
And it's hard with USF being in Tampa. But it's still good. So I came out of USF with a finance degree. And I always knew that I wanted to do financial planning for people. And this was kind of like almost pre the financial planning world because when I graduated, it was just more than a couple of years ago. And I got into the insurance business, more on the life insurance side, a little bit of financial planning, got a securities license, but really went down the estate planning side of things and worked some major companies. I was actually one of the first people to get into the insurance business in the banks, and I became a senior vice president at First Union, then in Wachovia, helped founded the insurance group there many years ago. So I was in that in the insurance business, estate planning side of the insurance business, a little bit of financial advisory, investment management, but I made a decision about 4 or 5 years ago to really invert my business, to really do most of my business on the financial advisory, financial planning side, investment management. And I inverted it. I literally went 90% of the business is all financial advisory. And that took about a year and a half to do that. They're really different businesses. And it was a technology issue, like learning all the new technology, licensing. One of the reasons why I did it is for licensing, because the way we do it, the regulatory agencies treat us differently, and it makes it a little bit easier on the compliance side to run our business. But more so, I just wanted to get a little bit less transactional and more on the relationship side. And we've grown from basically no assets under management to we're going to break 60, even 65 million assets under management by the end of the year. So we're pretty excited by that. We have a really strong focus on working with entrepreneurs. We have an avatar for our entrepreneurs called Joe. And Joe is either J-O-E or J-O. And it's basically a gal, in his 50s, has a business, has a couple kids, likes to do things out, sports, but the sports would be something like scuba diving or offshore fishing or skiing, mountain climbing, something like that. Little lonely, he runs his business, doesn't have people to talk to, outgrew his advisors, and we look for people like that. And so we are really all about the entrepreneurs, because I learned in the insurance business they teach you to something called fact finding, asking questions, and being good at fact finding is really knowing what to ask the question and when, right? Kind of having guts to ask the right questions. And one of the questions I always like to ask is, what was the first major obstacle that you overcame in order to make your business successful? And I really think it's great that this country allows us to basically be unequal, right? A lot of people in the current press are talking about equality, but the reality is what really makes this country really cool is that we have the ability and the right to be unequal, to be better than the person next to us, to work harder. And we don't have a caste system here. We don't have a class system here. And it doesn't matter who you are. You don't have to have a degree. You can just work really hard, maybe a little bit of luck, a lot of elbow grease, and you can build a business. And overcoming those obstacles, because building a business is really hard. We'll probably get more into that later. It's a really hard thing to do.
Right.
And being able to overcome those obstacles, and it's not just going around the wall or over the wall, it's like going through the wall. I admire that, and I mean, it might sound corny, but I love hearing those stories. I think
me too.
great.
That's why we got this podcast.
Right. It's fun.
No, it really is. It's funny you mentioned opportunity. Recently I was talking to somebody who I met who was from a Eastern European country. When she was growing up there in her early life, it was part of the Soviet Union. So in a sense, she grew up there. But has now, done some different jobs and has lived in Florida for the past 5 or 6 years. And I asked her a question: what is the most surprising thing to you about living in the United States? And within about less than 10, I saw her brain going for about 5 or 10 seconds, and she said, so many opportunities.
Right.
So many opportunities. That was the most surprising thing from somebody from Eastern Europe when they come here. And it's funny, when she said that, I was thinking about all the immigrant people I've met in recent years, Uber drivers, people from Venezuela, and it's almost a common theme for them. They can't believe, a lot of people here might think, being an Uber driver, that's just like a second-hand job, or just that. They just see it as an opportunity. And that's why I think when you encounter a lot of these Uber drivers, a lot of them are immigrants, and taxi cab drivers traditionally have been a lot of immigrants, and they just see this is a service people need. People will pay me to do this job, and I get a nice car out of it, actually. And then they can do it on their free time. And you talk to a lot of these people, including this young woman I met, and she, they're oftentimes in school at night, doing other jobs. So yeah, I think when you mentioned, the opportunities this country gives us, it seems to me sometimes I reflect and think people that were born and raised here sometimes don't have the same perspective as someone who just got here, who has experienced another life somewhere else there's not those opportunities. And that's why they've moved, and that's why they've moved their life here. But moving back, Bob, to what you said, you seem to work with a lot of entrepreneurs in what you're doing. What are those people coming to you for financial advising? What's the role that you're playing in their personal advisement, maybe, and they're also in their companies and sort of these startups, right? How are you guys working with them?
So most of our companies are mature startups. They're not just getting started now. They've been at it a while. The revenue typically of the clients that we work with is somewhere north of $5 to about $40 million is typical revenue of the kind of companies. We do have some publicly held companies that we work with also that have revenue in north of $250 million. But most of the time, the entrepreneurs that we work with, the owners, their personal financial life and their business life is kind of intertwined. So you're really advising on both. So we're kind of like their personal CFO in a way, and also their personal chief investment officer. So both CIO and CFO. And nowadays, things financial are very complex. So it's not easy to kind of navigate that financial world. And I think all of us internally have some sort of ceiling of complexity that we can just sort of deal with, or even want to be able to deal with, because we're focusing on this, and we should be focusing on that. The guy's just building the business, but he helps to make sure that his retirement plan is done right, or his kid's education is taken care of, or he has enough cash, or whatever it might be. So it really depends on the client, but a lot of the needs are the same. You want to make sure you're saving, putting enough money aside. You want to make sure you have enough cash in your business. You want to make sure. A lot of times we work with to make sure that they have other advisors that are working really well. We have a really good reputation of working well in the sandbox. I like to say we play well in the sandbox, and bringing the right CPA in, bringing the right attorney or two attorneys in to make sure that to prevent the big problems from happening. So we really make sure that the guy, and again when I say guy, I'm being gender neutral, the guy does not make those big mistakes. Can't help people not make small mistakes, but we really try to prevent them from not signing a contract, from not committing these dollars to investing it over here, and really helping them build their business and really making a success for themselves and the people that work for them.
Good. And yeah, entrepreneurs, as you mentioned earlier, I mean, it's exciting in some ways, but it's for them, it's also in some ways frightening. They're taking on a lot of risk. They're putting a lot of time and capital, and sometimes they don't have much capital. What what sort of people are you seeing in that way? And I guess what advice would you have to, say, an entrepreneur that might be listening here, in terms of how can they build their own personal wealth in terms of savings and things like that? Like, you have a traditional job that you work for someone, you may have a 401k, you're the employee, it's a benefit, but now you're the employer, maybe the self-employer, and also you may just be you. It might be one other partner in your business. How do you sort of provide your own savings for your future while also trying to invest in your business?
That's a great question, and I use the analogy that you're going down the intercoastal and you have a 90-foot yacht and you have a 0-foot keel, right? And it's better to go down the intercoastal in a 75-foot yacht with a 10-foot keel. So what that means is you want to sometimes take some chips off the table. So not just keep reinvesting in the business, but putting money aside for yourself, making sure your house is paid off, making sure that you set up a 401k for yourself. We do a lot of 401ks here. We actually have our own separate business just for the 401k business, and fully funding your 401k, and just overall making sure that you do take some money out of that business and have it just for yourself. Because most entrepreneurs, they're a combination of never-ending optimists. Everything, I mean, they'll ignore the risks. It's full speed ahead. That's why I said before about don't sign that document. You got to read it first. You got to pay the $200 to have a lawyer look at it, or even $5,000, whatever it might be, to make sure that document is done properly before you sign it, right? So entrepreneurs really are either just optimists, everything is great, or they go into depression. In other words, being an entrepreneur is a very lonely existence sometimes, because you don't have somebody to talk to, right? You might need to go out and raise money, and it's funny, when you go out and raise money, you all of a sudden gain a superpower. You know what the superpower is when you're out raising money?
What's that?
You learn who your friends really are.
Oh, that's true. Yes,
right?
Yes.
And as soon as you stop raising money, you lose that superpower. That's kind of the way that works. So all the aspects of being an entrepreneur, the risk-taking, it's both exciting, exhilarating, like you said, but it's also scary and lonely at times. So a lot of times we offer emotional support to these guys because they just need to talk something through. They're scared, but ready to do something big, open a new division, hire 4 people, get a contract. They got the contract. God, well, now what do I do with it, right? It's all of that.
So you're on the financial end, but you mentioned lawyers. So do you have people you refer them to, or are they coming in? Yeah.
We have very strong relationships with different law firms here in South Florida, and nationally.
You can't step about 5 feet without running into a lawyer here anyway. So
yeah, there's a couple. Absolutely.
Well, you mentioned earlier that you have this sort of, I guess, ideal client. Joe, you mentioned,
yep.
And they have certain characteristics. Is this something your team here put together in sort of a profile of your ideal sort of entrepreneurial client?
Exactly. That's what we did. Our marketing group put that together. I mean, I was obviously worked hard on that, and it's really somebody that we feel most comfortable in working with. And it's funny because Joe is kind of an apt name, because it's either J or J-O-E, right?
Right.
And so, and it's like I said,
it's like Pat on Saturday Night Live.
Right, kind of right. And it's, they're generally conservative, in their political side. They're generally in their 40s or 50s, But on the other hand, I have an entrepreneur who's not conservative. He's 27 years old, and he's worth $75 million. Right? He's 27 years old. By the way, he's an FAU alum. Of course, right? Exactly. So, we do take all kinds, but that's who we like working with. That's who our services and our technology that we do is aimed at. And I've learned over the years that focus in business makes your business better, and it makes your life easier by focusing on one thing.
Yeah, that's interesting, because so you guys put together a plan to who is our ideal person, and you actually envisioned that person and the types of people. And like you said, you're not wedded to that, right? There's all sorts of people, but you're very laser focused on these are the people we're going after.
Yeah.
Clients,
I mean, we could service a 91-year-old widow, right? But that's not the technology that we have is made for a type A 50-year-old guy who's comfortable with technology, who wants this stuff done quickly and easily, and is only willing to go so far in the work that he does for himself, and that's it, right? And he wants us to do the rest of it. Versus a 91-year-old, they're better in technology than they used to be, but you would have a different set of technology for a 91-year-old than you would for a 40-year-old, right? Just the way it works. And also kind of your marketing material, your educational material, your proactive way you communicate, all that stuff would just be different. It's just a different market.
Yeah.
It's not one or better or worse, just different.
So speaking of this, I wanted to ask you a few questions. One on the technology side. Since you've been in this business for over 30 years, and technology, the world has changed drastically in 30 years. 30 years ago, there wasn't the World Wide Web. Now we have smartphones and we're glued to them. Yeah. And so, but all sorts of other things that are now also affecting the financial industry. There could be new laws and regulations, everything. So speak to the things that you've seen change, whether it be technological, laws, whatever, and how you've adapted to those things.
Well, obviously having email is probably the biggest difference, right? And we just, we email so much now, and now with the whole personal identifiable information thing that, you can't email documents that have personal identifiable information.
And every time I'm emailing anybody that's in the financial industry, there's always the tagline, this is no stock transfers or anything can be done over email. Yeah. So
so you have to keep all that stuff in mind. But it's the best thing about, in our business, they call the technology fintech, financial technology, so that's the acronym is kind of fintech, is it's made it better for the client. The client experience has gotten a lot better. It allows us to tailor the delivery of the services to the clients the way they want it. Excuse me. And that is all obviously evolving as, the Gen X's, the Gen Y's, the millennials, as they all move to the baby boomers. Everybody's kind of desires, needs, thoughts, how they want technology, how they want their information and services delivered to them has evolved over the years, and technology has allowed us to sort of keep up with that. A specific example, in our business, forms are the bane of our existence, paperwork, right? I mean, you could literally enter into a transaction with somebody, you bring somebody on, and you need literally a half-inch thick sheets of paper, just, it's 100 documents that you got to get signed. And it's, a lot of it is just boilerplate, and other lawyers get involved, and nobody reads any of that stuff. They're supposed to. They say they did.
It's like when you're buying a house and there's so much paper.
You're looking at 300 pieces of paper. It's terrible. People don't read any of that stuff, and it's in all kind of businesses like mortgages. And then making sure you get the right signatures in the right spot, and it's all read properly and all that. Well, now there's technology like the DocuSigns out there. It's all done electronically now. We don't have to print. There's no file cabinets in here. We don't have file cabinets anymore. Everything is electronic nowadays, so which is great. So I think the email account aggregation is a big thing where everybody can see all their accounts in one spot, and then the fact that we can interact with clients from needing forms and signatures and do it all electronically without having to FedEx them. That's why FedEx's earnings, by the way, went down so much again a couple of days ago. Besides Amazon, they're not getting the kind of paperwork they used to because the DocuSigns of the world, it's really affecting them, and that's capitalism, right? That's what's capitalism? Creative destruction, right?
Right.
FedEx built their business on having an envelope with these documents, got to the next day, had to be signed, they overnighted them back. I can do that 10 times faster now for 10% of the cost, 5% of the cost, and I can do it instantaneously.
Yeah, well, I mean, technology's in some ways great for the planet too, because you're saving. Yeah, Dunder Mifflin goes out of business, but the trees are continuing to grow. So,
and less fraud too.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah,
less fraud.
Well, and that's interesting you say that, because there's still a lot of people, and for good reason, who feel sending personal information over electronic communication is dangerous because somehow it could be intercepted, and people do, there's cases now and then, Wells Fargo's had cases of basically disruptions from hackers and things like that. But that overall is still safer Are you saying with less fraud?
Well, if you send, there's a distinction there. If you send something, first of all, by fax is basically analog. So that's, I don't know why doctors and insurance companies still use, they're the only ones that still use faxes, right? That's an unsafe way of doing things. If you send a PDF email and somebody intercepts the email, it's the whole monkey in the middle thing, right? It's, you send it might be secure in your computer, but then it goes over the internet and then it gets to the other person. Between the time it goes from your computer to his computer, it can be intercepted and somebody could steal that information. Where I said there's no fraud, it's effectively impossible. Probably somebody will at some point figure it out. Is the DocuSigns of the world, the electronic signature programs? They're so encrypted, and it's encrypted from site to site. That's where you can effectively have no fraud in there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's those services that are out there.
So, also another question I wanted to ask you was, are you seeing now? You mentioned earlier in the last 4 years or so, you've pivoted your business from you inverted it from a lot of the insurance side to more of the financial advising. You're now 90% financial advising. Is that right? So have you seen a need in the market? Are people turning more to financial advisors where people like your services are needed more often?
Yes, I'm definitely seeing that. There's a lot of people, again, it goes back to that whole financial complexity, and people just have a tough time sort of navigating it. So they either just do it themselves and do it in a very basic way, or when they realize that they have an issue, they have a problem, and it's kind of beyond them, and it could be a retirement issue, there's hundreds of issues that it could be. They generally will reach out and, friend, hey, who do I talk to? And so we get a lot of referrals from people that are, the guy recently, he was a CEO of a company, and an optic company, and he's retiring, and what do I do? There's just so much stuff to do, and he's been so focused on running the business, proverbial, shoemaker with his kids have holes in their shoes, and like he needs to take care of all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's even people as smart as being a CEO of a $200 million company, he doesn't know our world, it's a different world.
So I think I read the other day that about 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every day right now.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And so I'm going to ask you two parts of this question. One, is that having an effect on you in terms of the people who are retiring right now? And or is it just the younger group? Because you said you were more targeted on that 40 to 50-year-old kind of category. Is it that younger subset? Are they just being more proactive than you've seen in the past?
So my practice is mostly pretty successful 50-year-old people, right? So they're people that are, number one, significantly above the average as far as, say, their income and their net worth. But what's even more interesting is I have these conversations literally every day. Yesterday I had one, and I'm going to be having one shortly. We have people that are in their 50s and 60s that are contemplating retiring, but none of them want to retire. They're all reinventing retirement, the basic concept of retirement.
Yeah.
I had a guy say to me, a 75-year-old guy, and he always worked hard. He was a hardworking guy. Retired for a year, 10 months. Hated it.
Hated being retired.
Hated it.
And he was 75.
75.
And he worked till he was 75.
Worked till he was 75 years old. He's a big fisherman, right? Got a boat, got a little bigger boat, but he couldn't fish 7 days a week. It just drove him crazy, right? And he said to me, he says, you know what? I always worked 5 days and was off 2. I'm not going to work 2 and off 5. I've got to have problems to solve. I find my brain is just diminishing, and I need to be interacting with people. I need to go somewhere. And he went into a completely different business, and he works 3 days a week, but he's re-energized again.
Good.
And I firmly believe in my heart of hearts that something like that will have that man live longer.
Right.
He will live a better life. He will live a longer life. He will live a healthier life because he is gainfully employed. I mean, Francisco, not for nothing, the whole concept of retirement is a relatively new concept to the industrial age.
Human history, yeah.
Yeah, people didn't used to retire, right? You can cut back, like in today's day and age, work Fridays. But to just stop working, I mean, I don't know about you, I don't think I can do that.
It's a great benefit of really Western civilization today. I mean, and if you look at the entire human history, people did not have the luxury to retire. They worked till the day they died. And they worked for their kids, and they had a lot of kids, and the kids were working, and the kids were working when they were 10,
Right.
And so I think we have this interesting concept, and, you go back to, say, the New Deal period, right? In the 1930s, we had the Great Depression, and we had this idea in America that, well, we need to provide for the elderly, and we need to provide for the indigent and the poor. And I think those are all really good concepts in terms of we want to, protect.
They sound good.
Yeah, the intention is good to make sure the people that are vulnerable are taken care of. But Social Security, right, was created then, the Social Security Administration, and now everyone expects it, right? And it's probably part of the financial advising you do. How much are you going to be getting from Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare and all these things, and yet people actually retired at that point mostly because they couldn't work. They were physically unable. They were having health issues. We didn't have the healthcare technology we have today as well, just 70, 80 years ago. And so you only had maybe a few years of life left. And so Social Security was created with that idea of just...
It was 3 years back then.
Yeah, a couple years of your life. Now people can take Social Security and
62.
live... Yeah, and you can live... The average age is 77, right?
But it's male and female.
Yeah, it's around there. But some people are living in 90.
Females.
I mean, I know a lot of people that are living in 90.
100.
Yeah, or I mean, some are living to 100. It's a little bit more rare, but people are doing it. And so, but look, I've also met, and you like the gentleman you just mentioned. I've met a lot of people who, the former president and founder of an organization I used to work for, the James Madison Institute. The founder was a guy named Dr. J. Stanley Marshall, and he died at, I believe he was 91 when he died. And I remember when I started working there, he was in his early to mid 80s. And I would see him. He was still held an office there. He would come in a couple days a week. And I was just surprised that this gentleman, there was a whole staff there running the organization. He was just on the board. But he was a former president of a university, Florida State University. He actually hired Bobby Bowden. But he...
isn't it great that he worked like that?
Yeah, and then one day, it was maybe I was maybe a few months on the job, and I'm down where the entranceway was, and I see him come in, and he's like in his bicycle outfit. He's like in bicycle shoes. This guy's like 85 or something. And I said, Dr. Marshall, are you biking today? And he said, oh, yeah. And I said, how often do you bike? Oh, several times a week. On the weekends, I do at least 30 miles. Sometimes and then he started telling me about this one bike trip he recently did that was like 100 miles to like the next county over. And
Could you bike 100 miles?
I mean, I was like, I was just, my mouth dropped. And then I also know this guy is very engaged. He was involved in all sorts of things, and he had a sharp mind. But I think it's kind of what you said. I mean, he had the concept of work, and it wasn't just work because I need to make money. He didn't need to. It was he was just he wanted to be invested in things and in his community, and of course he was very proactive about his health and biking and things like that. So very, very sharp. But I started meeting a lot of these sorts of people over time. I do development. I meet a lot of older folks, and it is quite interesting when you see people that want to keep their mind sharp. So it's interesting you say that. But let's shift right now. Speaking of community, you're involved in a lot of things in the community and things that are helping our country. But one of the things that you're really involved with is you're on the board of trustees for Florida Atlantic University, which, as a proud FAU alum, I remember when I met you and you joined the board, I was very excited about that. And you've been on the board now, is it
9 years?
9 years. 9 years. And this is a position that's appointed by the governor of Florida. So you've been appointed by Charlie Crist and Rick Scott. And when does your term end?
In January.
January. Do you want to be appointed? Are you expecting an appointment? Or?
It's being talked about.
It's being talked about. Okay. So you may continue, but even if you don't, that'd be 10 years, right? So You've done a great job, and you've seen FAU through some really interesting times. I know they've gone through a few presidents,
yes,
which the board is obviously very involved with. But also, FAU has a lot of really cool, innovative things happening. I know they have a whole entrepreneurship program, like an innovation program or something. Maybe you can speak to that. I also know, I learned recently, I know they have a charter school on the FAU campus, and this is like an elementary school?
It's two parts. It's K through 8. Right, and which is called A.D. Henderson School, and then we also have FAU High School.
Okay, and those are both basically on the FAU campus or adjacent to it.
No, they're on our
on
campus.
The campus.
Yeah, it's actually integrated into the university in a lot of different ways. College of Education, learning to be a teacher, they intern and co-op over at Henderson. So one of the advantages of that is that we have a really high teacher to student ratio. There's a lot of we have a lot of students come over and work with these kids, and it's very positive. It's great for the kids at Henderson and the FAU students.
Yeah.
The kids at Henderson, they go to football games, they go to basketball games. They sort of see like how cool it is to be in university. Because, I don't know if you were the first in your generation to go to university. But I was also, right, in my family. And so I wasn't exposed to university, right? I didn't really know any of this stuff. And
my exposing to universities was on Saturdays when we watched college football.
Right,
that was my
exactly, right. You didn't know that. And now these kids go to college football games. They will go to lectures. We bring a speaker in, and they'll bring over sixth graders, and they go to some university lecture. And these are it's a charter school, so these are not handpicked kids. There's we have kids in poverty all the way up to affluent. It's a whole sample of the community in there. So I think it's great that we have these 800 or so kids over there that are getting exposed, not to just any university, but they're getting exposed to FAU, and they're Go Owls. And it's funny, you see the T-shirts. Two of my godchildren go there, and it's so funny. I'll see them come home and they have their Henderson shirt that says FAU right below it, and they all wear FAU T-shirts. It's really 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 cool to see all that. But I think actually one of the coolest thing is, and we started this about 5 or 6 years ago. The gentleman that runs Henderson is, and we call Henderson, that's the totality of the school, the high school and the K through 8, is the kids are so smart that go there that about, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, he started a program. Well, that's not true. He started the program about 7 or 8 years ago, and it took about 2 or 3 years for it to happen, that some kids took all AP classes. Every class they took was AP. So they were graduating high school and college at the same time. We had to change the dates of our graduation because you had to graduate high school before you could graduate college, and it was off by a week, so we had to move it by a week. So the kid would graduate high school, then he would run through our graduation at FAU. Phenomenal, just absolutely phenomenal how great these kids are. They're getting automatic entry into our medical school.
Wow.
They're working with Max Planck and Scripps up at our Science Center in Jupiter. These kids are bright. They're going to Princeton. They're getting. It's amazing what's going on with these kids. So we have a lot of kids now that are graduating, Henderson kids that are graduating from Henderson with maybe not 4 years and just graduating with a bachelor degree at the same time, but they're going in with 2 years or 3 years of AP classes, which is amazing. These kids are so bright. If you ever go over there sometime, you'll hear like an alarm go off, and they sort of lock it down because they have drone races in the hallways. It's just amazing. The kids, they do underwater drones. They do drones. They do robotic stuff. These kids are so bright. They're building solar powered race cars.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's what education should be. And
right?
Speaking of which, Florida has 67 counties, and so there's generally 67 school districts. But I learned recently there's actually a couple unique additional school districts, and the FAU schools have one.
FAU is an additional school district.
It's its own school district.
Yep.
It's governed by
Department of Education.
Okay.
Right? And so our schools are lab schools, charter schools, but they're lab schools within our own school districts.
And so explain to me, sorry, so one of the schools is K through 8.
Yep.
And the other is
high school.
High school. And which one, I know, is it the K through 8 that just got recognized as the second best
school in the country.
Second best school, period, in the country.
Period, yeah. We always win. People don't realize how amazing it is. We win these awards regularly. We're Google Lab School. I think there's 20 or 30 of them in the country. I could be wrong on that number, but it's a very small number. We just got the high school, the top 7th high school in the country. And it's there's thousands of schools out there. It's amazing. We have people from not just all over the country, but all over the world visiting Henderson. And just to see what they're doing so special. Part of it is it's part of FAU. We have the College of Education, so we have a lot of kids coming over. When I say kids, FAU students coming over. Getting old, I call these kids because they get younger every day for me. And they're actually working with them, and they have the benefit of being on a university campus, so we take advantage of all that. But it's really, Joel, aren't a lot of schools, the reason why they're successful is because of leadership and entrepreneurship within the confines of the bureaucracy? Mm-hmm. Well, Joel has done that. Joel has provided singular focus on student achievement.
He's the principal?
Yeah, we have a principal of the schools, but he runs the whole program.
Okay.
Right.
And this is Joel
Herbst.
Okay.
Yeah. Amazing individual. And he has just really driven this program to success, which is just, it's really flat amazing. And then another advantage to FAU is we have all these kids that all want to come to FAU. These are really, really strong,
good pipeline,
academically strong children and prospective students, and they're going to come to us instead of coming to another university, which is great.
Because it sounds like if you're like take the fact that this school's like, let's just say it was not on the FAU campus, it's the number 2 school in the country. That means the production of those kids must be amazing. These are probably kids that can get into Ivy League schools.
Oh yeah.
Also, and you're getting Ivy League quality candidates coming to FAU.
Yeah.
So that's really great for FAU and for South Florida and the community here. And hopefully it's a way, I know that our leaders in Florida continue to try to come up with ways to keep Florida college graduates in Florida, to create a great environment, business environment here for them to do that, startup jobs, all sorts of things. And so, but one way maybe is some of these things that's going on at FAU. Now, tell me, how much do you know about, I know FAU's got like an entrepreneurship innovation sort of program.
We call it Tech Runway.
What is it called? Tech Runway. Tech Runway. And that is now teaching more entrepreneurial startup sort of skills.
Yeah, it's not really teaching. It's not part of the education part. But startups they'll house themselves there.
Okay.
And they get free space and all that, and you get mentorship, things of that nature. So Tech Runway is really cool. And then in the business school, which is another part of it, they have scholars over there that will work from an entrepreneurship basis with a lot of these. Whether it's they'll have like startup competitions, they'll have elevator pitch competition, which is really cool. Like kind of a door opens and you get 90 seconds to pitch.
Shark Tank style kind of.
It's a kind of a Shark Tank kind of thing with cash prizes and all that. It's kind of nerve wracking, to see to watch this.
I think that's great, and I know the dean of the business school is Dan Gropper, right? Is that something he's helped lead on?
Yeah,
and one of my and not just me, but I know a lot of entrepreneurs and others out there. One of the criticisms of, say, business schools or just going to college in general is that colleges really don't teach, and even in the business schools, they don't teach how to get a job, how to put together a resume, the basic skills, and they don't actually teach entrepreneurship, and they don't teach making pitches and things like that. And so it's kind of frustrating. And sometimes I run into a lot of people say getting an MBA is a waste of time unless you're doing something very, very specific, technical with that MBA that you need it. But if you're going to be an entrepreneur, like an MBA is a waste of time. But it sounds like over at FAU in the business school, they've opened the door to a lot more things like doing these entrepreneurial pitches and contests and things like that. What have you seen kind of unique over there?
We do that. We have stock trading room. These kids are actually trading stocks. The startup pitches. Our internship program is really strong. They work really hard to get these kids internships. They're big on that. Obviously, just the career side. Our FAU School of Accountancy has, depends on the year, the highest pass rate of the CPA exam in Florida.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and they're oversubscribed for jobs. So
Good.
They have like 105, 110, I don't know what the percentages are, but they're every kid, every student that graduates the accountancy program of FAU gets a job. These kids, and they're all well sought after because they teach them in a way that they actually learn stuff and it's useful to an employer. I think that one of the biggest advantages of FAU in the business program is that when Dan Gropper came aboard, he wasn't hidebound by old traditions that he had to do something a certain way. He said, I'm going to listen to employers, I'm going to see what they want, and they actually they'll bring outside employers in, whether it's Office Depot or Geo Group or any of the big employers that are around here, and say, what are you looking for in an employer and an employee? And they provide that. And it's not just in the business school. In the engineering school, a big secret we had for many years, we weren't allowed to talk about it, is that we had almost 400 of our students working for BlackBerry in Sunrise.
Wow.
Yep, never talked about. BlackBerry considered that a secret, and they didn't want anybody to know about it because we were training electrical engineers the way they wanted them to develop the product. Now, obviously, BlackBerry didn't do as well, but what for the 15 years that this was going on, these kids, there was like a direct pipeline right into BlackBerry.
That's fantastic. And I know you've hired some FAU students.
I've had interns. I've had a lot of people here. As a matter of fact, this morning I was writing an email to 5 prospective interns, setting them up for interviews because I need to hire another one. So
good.
So it's
now, Bob, we talked about this. I want to go back and sort of digress from the FAU for a second. In your business, we were talking earlier before we started the interview about how in the past it might have been a sort of a success point to be able to have a company with a lot of employees. And today with technology, I hate to say technology is replacing employees, but making things more efficient maybe. How has that worked out for you in terms of building a staff or outsourcing some of the things that you need done?
So it's not just replacing employees, it's really leveraging people. And I decided 4 years ago to reduce my headcount to utilize technology, but also to utilize outsourcing. You still have to have people. I have a virtual assistant. I've only met her once, been with me for 5 years. Another state.
Wow.
Right? And so sits in her house, does her thing, right? So we outsource compliance. Guy does compliance for 40 firms, I think, 40 or 50 firms. Why do I have to hire my own compliance guy? I mean, compliance is critically important. We're audited. There's all sorts of stuff that we have to, all these rules we have to follow, all these forms we have to submit, T's crossed and I's dotted. Well, Derek does that for us. I see Derek a couple times a year, but we outsource. So all the functionalities, trading, actually in our business, we obviously manage money. And when you manage money, there's all sorts of trading that has to go on. People want money, they're giving us money, there's money's got to be moved, all this stuff. So there's a lot of trading that has to go on, and it's got to be done right. Well, I could do that. I could hire somebody, put them in a desk, and pay for the real estate, pay for the computer, pay for all the stuff you need to do that, train that guy and all that. Why do that? I can have a company do it who does it for 150 firms, better than I'm ever going to be able to do with one guy. That's all they do. And they do it with $25 billion worth.
Wow.
So I outsource.
And do they do it at a cost that's less to you?
Oh, it's a third or a quarter of the cost. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's significantly less than having an employee. And they guarantee it, so they don't make mistakes because they have to eat the mistake if they make one. So it is leveraging employees. So it's funny. It's funny. A lot of the really successful guys here in Boca that are really the big hitters, they brag about the fact they do it without a lot of employees.
Yeah.
They that's become the new mantra. Oh, not that I have 300 employees, I have 2.
Yeah. Well, that's really great. I think people, when they see how successful it can be on a much more efficient model.
It's a lot less aggravation. One quick story. I have a client in the fish business, frozen fish business. They do over $100 million of frozen fish on an annual basis with 17 employees.
Wow.
Think about that. That could never have been done 25 years ago.
No.
Right.
It's really amazing. Well, Bob, I know you're involved in many other things, and one is you're really involved in philanthropically as well with helping people with autism. I know you have a son, Scott, who is 27 now, who has autism. Tell me a little bit about Scott and how what that's like having a son with autism and how you've seen him grow over the years.
So Scott is the coolest. I have 3 children. And the other 2 are great in their own way. My 18-year-old will tell you that, by the way, if I didn't. So, but Scott didn't speak until he was 14 years old. He was completely nonverbal. Wow. And one day I came home and my wife said, "Scott's got something to tell you. We have a lot of kids. You mix up the kids' names." I said, "You mean Andrew, Matt?" No, Scott. Huh? And he comes out and he says, "Pizza." And I was what? It's like, what's going on? So, there's more. says, I want pizza. I just lost it.
Great first words.
Oh, I called my dad. I said, Dad, listen to this. This is just, we all got sick on pizza that night.
Yeah.
It was great. It was just so cool that he did that. But now he's amazing. Rides his bike to the bus stop, takes the bus. He works 2 jobs.
Wow.
Which is amazing. And he loves it.
What kind of jobs does he work?
So he works for one company. He works for an anti-shoplifting company, and like the tags you get when you go to a department store that's on your shirt and your pants, they actually sort those tags by the millions. And this I'll have to do a shout out. Company's called Alltag, and they employ about 30 special needs adults.
That's amazing.
Who do this sorting.
Yeah.
It's a good business. And so he's been there for 7 years. I mean, this is pretty special that a special needs adult has a job that long, because the unemployment rate in the special needs community is somewhere between 80 and 90%.
Wow.
Yeah, that's unemployment rate.
Right.
And Scott also works at Rocco's Tacos in the afternoon.
Oh.
He works at the
Great
Boca
place.
location.
Yeah.
He's actually a dishwasher. He brags about it. He actually laughs while he works. He thinks it's the greatest thing. And it's just absolutely amazing. If you ever go to Boca Rocco's Tacos, come and ask for Scott.
Okay.
He always gets a lot of visitors. But what's more important is that my wife, Michelle, founded a group called Autism After 21. And Autism 21 works on lifestyle changes and help so that people that are in the special needs community can get jobs, right? Help them get jobs. She actually has a camp now that runs on the FAU Boca campus.
Wow.
And I think 110 or 120 from high school to college age young adults to adults. And I was having a lot of success working with vocational rehab, which is a state agency.
those are young adult students who have autism.
Yep.
That are at FAU.
No.
What
it happens to be housed at FAU.
Housed at FAU.
She uses the dorms, right?
Okay.
To it's a place, and she uses the different parts of FAU. But universities like to rent out their dorms in the summertime, so I encourage that. So like that's, as a trustee, I think it's important. So this charity that my wife runs actually is a revenue source to FAU. She writes us a check every year, which is great.
Wow.
To rent dorms and to use.
And how is her program funded? Is it through support like donors?
So she gets private donors. She also gets funding by vocational rehab, which is a state agency.
Okay.
Because they are really struggling to help special needs adults get jobs, because they sit at home, and then what happens is the single parent dies, and what do you do then? So they really have to help these kids get jobs. And if you think about, if they can just make that unemployment rate go from, say it's 85, nobody really knows exactly what it is. Say it goes from 85 to 65. That's a big deal.
Right, that's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people, right? So she's having some success with both teaching employers like the special things you need to have to employ a person like this, and then teaching the potential employee, the applicant, what they need to do to be a good employee. So it's actually going to be expanding to other schools in the summertime. So there's going to be some cool announcements.
So the housing at FAU, is this for people with autism that are struggling with housing issues? Why are they there?
Because she holds the camp at FAU. So
it's like a summer camp.
It's a week long. Yeah, it's week-long sessions. They have classrooms, and it's kind of like you're a student, but you're a student for a week or two. Sometimes it's 2 week sessions. They bring the adults in. Sometimes they're kids, they're high school kids. Bring them in, and they go through all these classes. They go through role playing. It's tough for non-special needs adults. You and I have a tough time role playing, right?
Trying to give a speech or something.
Yeah. How do you shake a hand, right? How do you look somebody in the eye? What do you wear, right? Do they really need a resume? There's, what is a resume? What if they do? What does it look like? Some of the things to think about: change the mindsets. Change the mindsets of the parents. The parents, a lot of times, most of the time, are actually holding that person back from getting the job. Not for nothing, Scott started riding the bus when he was 20 or 21 years old by himself. We got a lot of grief for that. Oh my God, you put Scott on the bus alone? He's 27. Probably 6 foot tall, right? So he does it, but a lot of parents in the special needs community think we're out of our minds.
Yeah.
They can't imagine putting their special
it must have been
needs
tough for you too, first time.
I was scared to death.
Yeah.
But Scott had to do it, right? He had to get out, and he loves it. He knows the bus schedule better than anybody. He knows all the buses, knows exactly where they go. If we had lived in a different community with had subways, he would go all over the place. He knows what he's doing.
But he doesn't drive.
He can't drive. Listen, he's at a third grade, mental level.
Yeah.
But he uses his stuff better. What God gave him, he uses better than all of us.
Yeah,
just a special person.
So I'm going to ask you a question like this in a minute, but I want to ask you about Scott too, because you mentioned the 2 jobs he currently has. Did he have any previous jobs, and if so, what was his first job?
Scott's first job, I think, was at Alltech. So,
okay.
Yeah.
But he's been there 7 years.
It's been 7 years
now.
That's
great.
And he worked at Bruises before. I don't know if you remember Bruises in Boca. There was one in West Palm. And he, a great gentleman, Skip Stoltz, who also has a special needs child, let Scott work there. And, he needed a job coach. He needed some help to get started that was probably 4 or 5 years ago.
What did he do there?
He was a dishwasher also, helps in the kitchen, likes to work with the chef. Get stuff. He's just a helpful person. Take the trash out, get trays and all that kind. Just helpful in the kitchen. Just loves being with all the stuff going on and all that. So so those were his first. I don't know which one started first, Bruises, but I think it was Alltech.
Great. And Bob, this is a question I've asked a lot of people. That's why I wanted to ask about Scott. What was your first job? And this was a question I heard Ben Sass say he likes to ask people when he meets them just to learn a little more about them.
That's in his book, I think.
It's in his book, yes.
Yeah, Ben Sass's book. Ben Sass is a great guy too, by the way. Wow. My first job, it's funny. I was thinking about this when you were asking here. I can't remember. I used to detail cars, so kind of an entrepreneurial kind of thing. Right?
I did too.
You did?
In high school. Me and my best friend Sean, who we had on the podcast.
So much in common. It's amazing. Right?
My best friend from high school. He and I actually, when we were junior year of high school, it's his idea. Hey, let's start an auto detailing business.
Right.
And we did. And we ended up having 200 customers over a year and a half or something. And it was great. It was
good money.
It was great, good money. I was actually, as a 17-year-old, when Sean told me how much we would be charging people to detail their car, I said, people will pay that much?
Yes.
So I was shocked. And the supplies that you buy and you invest in early was not that much. So I was just in shock. And actually, people thought what we were charging was a really good deal compared to some of these professional places you go. And then we would just show up, and I guess you could do this when you're 17. We'd go to doctor's offices, where they clearly say no soliciting. And
you get away with it.
You get away because you go up to one of the nurses or something and say, "Hey, you give them a flyer. We'll come here and detail. And if 3 of you, if you can get 3 other people, we'll do yours for free, or something like that." And so, of course, and then you pull up and you do 3 or 4 cars at the same time while they're at work. They love it. You love it. You just got done, and boom, that bought me some money for Marlins games and concert tickets and all sorts of stuff. When I was a kid.
You were my competitor back then.
Yeah, probably. Right? Well, I was probably behind your time. Come on.
Yeah, a couple of years, right?
We were taking the business you left behind. Right, but tell me about what you did.
The same thing, but it's funny. I never went to commercial. I just went to house. I moved to Plantation in 1973, and it was a fairly affluent community, and so I just went to houses, knocking people's doors, and I never. Always had work,
Yeah.
And there was people in there that had Ferrari. First time I ever saw a Ferrari, guy had a the one on the detective. What's the guy's name in Hawaii? The red Ferrari.
I don't know.
Not Starsky and Hutch, but the other one. Anyways, I can't think what it is. 348 Ferrari, I think it was.
Wow.
And so we used to, Mercedes and the whole bit. It was a lot of luxury cars, and you could charge a lot of money. And people, it's funny, I never got pushback on the price. They gladly did it. You just had to do a good job.
Yeah.
I always had money. It was great, and you got cash, which is you put cash in your pocket. I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was good.
So what did that teach you? Any lessons learned or things you might still think about from those early days?
Customer service.
Customer service. Yes.
Yeah. Always offer good customer service. Look the guy in the eye, shake his hand, show up on time, do what you say you're going to do. Say please and say thank you for the opportunity. Those are the 4 things.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, and I think if you do those 4 things, it's a key to success in business.
Pretty simple.
Show up on time, do what you say you're going to do, say please and say thank you for the business or thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, people remember that. You do the job like you said. The middle part's important. Do say what you're going to do.
Right.
That's what they're paying for.
But if you do those 4 things, you're ahead of 99% of the people.
Yeah.
Which isn't that kind of amazing?
It is. We had on this podcast a couple years ago John Crossman,
right?
Who had a book he put together. He's a successful Crossman and Company commercial real estate company in Florida, and a little bit in the Southeast, and he put a book together called Career Killers and Career Builders, and it was basically 5 on each side of the equation. It was very simple things, and it's really great for young people to read that, say, hey, he just started to realize, he said, I wasn't, he actually learned later in life that he had a learning disability, but he just did very simple things, became very successful very quick, and said, it's just these simple things, and it's a lot of follow through. And he's noticed that a lot of young people that are looking for jobs aren't following through on those things.
They don't show up for an interview on time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what? They don't say thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, didn't you?
This little sense of entitlement.
Right.
Yeah.
Say thank you. I mean, you can never go wrong with those 2 words.
No, you can't. You can't. People love it. People want to be thanked. In my business and fundraising,
Thank you.
Thank all the time, because that's you wouldn't be surviving without the work of the supporters, or in this case, the customers. Well, Bob, this has been a great conversation. I wanted to give you some of the last words. Is there any advice you want to pass down to others listening, other entrepreneurs, or just people in the community, and anything you'd like to close out with?
I think we just did. I think there's to me, the 4 avenues of success, or the 4 tenets of success are, say please, say thank you for the opportunity, show up on time, and do what you say you're going to do. And if you do those 4 things, I think you have it made, no matter what your business is.
And then, as your business is growing, you can come to Rubin Wealth Advisors here in Boca Raton, and they'll take care of your retirement needs. So and not just retirement needs, but also all the financial things. Maybe if you're a startup, or entrepreneur looking to be part of a startup, you can talk to Bob and his team about what to do. So thank you, Bob, Rubin Wealth Advisors here in Boca Raton, for being on the Agents of Innovation podcast.
Thank you, Francisco.
Does it hit you like a freight train? Does it burn you like fire? Does it empty you from inside like a spoonful of desire? Do you rage in opposition? Do you privately admire? I knew you as a child when the world one day surprised. And I knew you in our school days. We're all fighting for our lives as we grew into the young men, staking claims and choosing sides. Split us through and through. Wash them out, and is there somewhere I'll find you?